this short video, I want us to take a look at how we can make decisions in our code. Imagine the following. We have 100 available seats. Then we ask the user for how many seats he or she wants to reserve. And depending on the input that they give, we want to do one out of two things. If they try to reserve too many seats, we are just going to display an error message. But if it is possible to reserve that many seats, we will update how many available seats there are after their reservation and display a success message. In both cases, we will after that display how many available seats there are. And I've already started to write a little bit of code for this. So I have written the first part here and the last part here. And it's now up to us to write the code for making the decision. And that will be an if statement that we will be using to do this. So let's see how that might look in code. So now that we have the code, let's have a look at what we did. So when we ask ourselves a question like this, are there enough seats available? That will translate to an if statement. And when we have an if statement, we have the keyword if, and then we have our condition. This should always evaluate to either true or false. And in this case, we are checking if the number of seats we want to reserve is less than or equal to the amount of seats available. And if this is true, meaning that we can make our reservation, what we will do is that we will update the seats available and subtract the number of seats that we are making a reservation for. And then the next step here is to display the success message. So if this evaluates to true, we will execute all the instructions that are indented. Should our condition evaluate to false, we will instead go to the else statement. So that is this path here. And then what we will do in here is just to print an error message. So we see that here. And in both cases, we see that when we are done with our if-else statement, in both cases we will do this. We will print how many seats there are available. So let's try to run it and see how it works. So let's say that we want to reserve 20 seats. So that is less than the available 100, meaning that we will go in here, update the seats, display a success message, and then finally display how many seats there are available. So let's try and see if it works. And we can see we get the expected output. If we run it again, and this time we try to reserve 120 seats. So it's too many seats. Then this will not work and we will go down the path with no here in the flowchart. And in the code, it means that this will evaluate to false and we will not execute these two instructions here. Instead, we will go into the else and print an error message. And we'll see if that is what happens too. And we see it is. We print the error message and then we continue after the if-else statement and print the number of seats available. Now imagine that we want to make a slight change to our script here. And if it is possible to make a booking, we want to check if we have managed to book the last available seat. If that is the case, we want to give a different message than the one that we are already giving if there are seats left. So we'll see how that might look in the code. It might look something like this. And what we have here now is a nested if statement, or nested if statements. So if we can make a booking, there are enough space, what we will do is go in and update the available seats. After that, we will check if we booked the last seat, and if we did that, we will display a lucky message. And I did it here by adding another if statement inside the other one. It's a nested if statement. And then if this is true, it was the last one that we booked, we print this message, and otherwise we print the one that we had before. So this is the statement that we had before. But we can actually rewrite this code in a slightly different way. Instead of using nested if statements, we can use if-elif-else. So if we have several different options, we can use if-elif-else. And if I rewrite the code, then we can have a look at how that would look. That would look something like this. So now what we're doing here is that we're first checking this condition to see, all right, is it possible to make this reservation that we want to do? And if it is, we will go in and execute these two statements. But note here that I changed this to smaller than. So if our reservation does not take up all the available seats, we will go in here. But if our reservation is exactly as big as we have available seats, we will instead execute these statements. And how does this work? Well, if this condition evaluates to true, we will go in and execute these statements. Then we will skip the other ones and continue afterwards. But if this one evaluates to false, we will go and check the elif statement or else if statement to see if this one evaluates to true. And if it does, we will execute these lines or these instructions and then continue after here. But if both of these, this one and this one, evaluates to false, we will always go into the else statement and execute this instruction instead. So here we have the same three options, it's just rewritten using if, elif, and else instead.